Welcome to Life Stories. What if everything you believed about your family, your legacy, and your future was turned upside down in a single moment? When Lauren Caldwell's father passed away, she expected to be left out of his will. But what she didn't expect was the secret her mother had kept hidden for years, a fortune built in silence. A legacy of vision and impact that would change everything. Betrayal, power struggles, and an unexpected path to redemption. This is a story of transformation. Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's journey. The room smelled of old mahogany and polished leather. The kind of scent that clung to the walls of law offices where lives were changed with the flick of a pen. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, my heart a steady, deliberate drum in my chest. Across from me, Olivia reclined in her chair with the ease of someone who already knew she had one. The sunlight filtering through the window caught the diamonds on her bracelet, the one Dad had gifted her last year. Another reminder of his unwavering favoritism. Mr. Caldwell, our father's lawyer, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. His voice measured and deliberate. The properties at 1542, Pine Grove Avenue, 789, Lakeview Drive, and the summer home in Newport, all to Olivia Caldwell. I barely flinched. The weight of finality pressed down on me, but I had expected this. At 32, I had witnessed the pattern too many times to be surprised. Olivia had always been the golden child, the daughter who embodied everything my father valued. She had followed his blueprint for success, checking every box with precision. Married to the right man, mother to the right children, a pillar of the business world. I, on the other hand, had been the disappointment. A marine biologist instead of a corporate executive. A woman who divorced the husband my father had handpicked for me rather than tolerate his infidelities. I had carved out a life of my own, one that didn't fit into my father's rigid expectations. The Caldwell Enterprises Group, including all assets and subsidiaries, shall also be inherited by Olivia Caldwell. The words landed like a quiet blow, but I remained still. Olivia's smirk widened, as though she had just been handed the final, irrefutable proof of her superiority. She had dressed for the occasion, sleek black designer dress, perfectly manicured nails, every strand of blonde hair in place. My mother used to say that people like my father and Olivia never questioned their victories. They accepted them as natural order, as though the universe itself had preordained their success. Is that all? Olivia asked, her voice dripping with false sympathy. She turned to me, offering a practiced pout. Oh, Lauren, I'm so sorry. But you know how Dad felt about your choices. I met her gaze without flinching. I'm well aware. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat again. There is, however, a small personal effects account set aside for Lauren. It contains family photographs and some jewelry from your grandmother. Olivia laughed lightly, almost as if she pitied me. Well, at least you got the family photos. Not sure where you'll put them in that tiny apartment of yours. I exhaled slowly, smoothing down the fabric of my dress as I stood. Are we finished here, Mr. Caldwell? The lawyer nodded, clearly relieved that I wasn't going to make a scene. He had likely seen enough inheritance battles to know they rarely ended cleanly. Lauren, Olivia called as I reached the door, her tone syrupy sweet. Don't worry. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Maybe there's even a position for you at Caldwell Enterprises. Something entry-level. Of course. I turned and offered her a small smile. That's generous of you, Olivia. But I'll be just fine. I left without another word. The drive home was quiet. The trees lining the road tinged with gold and red. Autumn was settling in, the crisp air carrying a hint of change. My mother had loved this time of year. She would have hated what had happened today. My phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. Dinner tonight? We should talk about your future. I ignored it, just as I had ignored all her hollow gestures since Dad's funeral last week. Instead, I parked in front of my small house, a charming craftsman-style home I had bought, mortgage-free, 3 years ago. It wasn't grand like Olivia's estate, but it was mine. Inside, I went straight to my office, my fingers trembling slightly as I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. There, wrapped in a thick manila envelope, was my mother's final gift. She had given it to me 2 years ago, just months before her unexpected death. "Don't open this until after your father is gone," she had whispered, her frail hands gripping mine with surprising strength. "Promise me, Lauren." And I had promised. Now, as I carefully peeled back the flap, I finally understood why. Inside were documents. A lot of them. Investment portfolios, stock certificates, financial statements. At the top was a letter, written in my mother's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Lauren, if you are reading this, then your father is gone. And I'm sure he has done exactly what I feared. Your father was a brilliant businessman, but he never understood what truly mattered. He let his pride and outdated beliefs blind him to the most valuable thing he had: a daughter with vision, with integrity, with the heart to change the world. What he also never realized is that while he was building Caldwell Enterprises, I was building something of my own. 20 years ago, I began investing in sustainable technology companies. Your research on marine conservation inspired me. While your father dismissed your work as youthful idealism, I saw the future. These holdings have grown considerably, worth far more than Caldwell Enterprises. Everything is in your name, transferred slowly and legally over the years through a network of investments your father never thought to question. Olivia can't touch a cent of it. Use it wisely, my darling girl. Make the difference I always knew you could. All my love. Mom." My hands trembled as I sifted through the documents. Offshore accounts, environmental tech startups, wind farms, ocean cleanup initiatives. My father had never had a clue. The sheer scale of it made my head spin. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Olivia. "Seriously, Lauren. We need to talk about arrangements. Dad would have wanted us to work together." I picked up my phone, my pulse steady this time, and replied, "You're right. We should talk. Why don't you come over tomorrow morning? I have something to show you." That night, I stayed up late, poring over my mother's documents, marveling at her brilliance. While my father had been grooming Olivia to take over his empire, my mother had been quietly securing a different future, a future that belonged to me. Tomorrow, Olivia would finally see the truth. At exactly 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Olivia standing on my porch, dressed impeccably in another tailored designer outfit. She had mastered the art of appearing effortlessly composed, though today, there was an edge of impatience in her eyes. Her gaze flickered over my home, barely concealing her disdain. "Oh, Lauren," she sighed, stepping inside. "We really need to talk about getting you set up properly. This isn't the kind of place a Caldwell should be living in." I ignored the dig and led her to the dining room, where my mother's documents were spread out across the table. "You're right, Olivia. We do need to talk." I gestured to the papers. "There's something Mom wanted you to see." Her expression hardened slightly at the mention of Mom. They had never been close. Olivia was Dad's daughter through and through. "What are you talking about?" she asked, moving toward the table with an air of practiced boredom. I simply waited. After a moment's hesitation, her manicured fingers reached for the documents. Her smirk faltered as she scanned the pages. The color drained from her face. Then, her hands began to tremble. This can't be real." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom was just a housewife. She didn't know anything about business." I nearly laughed. Mom had spent years playing the role of the quiet, supportive wife, nodding along while Dad and Olivia talked business at family dinners. All the while, she had been building something bigger than either of them had ever imagined. "Oh, it's real," I said, my voice steady. "Every document is verified. Mom knew exactly what she was doing." Olivia sank into a chair, her perfect posture finally breaking. But Dad's company is yours. I finished for her. Just like Dad wanted. But Mom's legacy? That belongs to me. Silence stretched between us. Olivia drummed her nails against the table, her mind clearly racing. I knew that look. She was recalibrating, strategizing, searching for a way to turn this to her advantage. Finally, she spoke, her tone slipping into the smooth, persuasive voice she used in boardrooms. We could work together, she suggested. Pool our resources. Think about it, Lauren. With Caldwell Enterprises infrastructure and these assets. No, Olivia. I cut her off. That's not what Mom wanted. And it's not what I want. Her mask slipped for just a second, revealing something raw beneath anger, maybe even fear, but she recovered quickly. Standing abruptly, she smoothed her dress and squared her shoulders. You're making a mistake, she said coolly. I smiled. Maybe. But at least it's mine to make. She stormed out, her expensive heels clicking furiously against the pavement. I exhaled slowly, feeling lighter than I had in years. Mom had been right, success isn't always loud. Sometimes, the quietest players make the biggest moves. I had work to do. The next morning, the storm began. I woke up to 14 missed calls and a flood of texts from relatives. Word had spread quickly. Olivia had made sure of that. Aunt Patricia, Lauren. How could you do this to your sister? Your father would be devastated. Cousin Michael, hey, Lauren. We should talk business. I have some great investment opportunities. A childhood friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Remember when we used to play together as kids? We should catch up. I sighed and muted my phone. Mom had always taught me the value of boundaries. Today, I had no time for family drama. My first stop was Harrison and Associates, the law firm that had quietly managed Mom's empire for years. Unlike Caldwell's pompous corporate lawyer, Sarah Harrison was sharp, modern, and unshakable. Right on schedule, she said as I stepped into her office. Your mother predicted Olivia would try to contest this within days of finding out. I settled into the chair across from her desk. What's our next move? Sarah pulled out a thick folder, her lips curving slightly. Your mother left very specific instructions. She knew Olivia would try to challenge the holdings, likely claiming your mother was mentally unfit when she made these arrangements. I scoffed. That sounds exactly like Olivia. Sarah nodded. Which is why your mother built an airtight case. She slid a stack of documents toward me. She spent years documenting everything: business meetings, investment decisions, even recordings of conversations with financial advisors. It's all here. Your mother wasn't just running an empire, she was playing the long game. A slow, admiring smile spread across my face. Mom had been 10 steps ahead of everyone. And there's more. Sarah continued, pulling out another document. Your mother also left instructions regarding Caldwell Enterprises. I frowned. What do you mean? She suspected that your father's company might try to obstruct some of her environmental initiatives. Sarah glanced up at me, her eyes gleaming. So she put certain measures in place. As she laid out the details, I felt something settle in my chest. Not just relief, but clarity. Mom hadn't just left me wealth. She had left me a strategy. By the time I left Harrison and Associates, I knew exactly what needed to be done. My mother's empire wasn't just about money, it was about vision. About making a real impact. And if Olivia thought she could sweep this under the rug and continue our father's legacy untouched, she was about to receive the lesson of a lifetime. I spent the afternoon reviewing documents, tracing every investment my mother had made. Her portfolio was nothing short of brilliant: wind farms, solar energy companies, ocean cleanup initiatives, even research into biodegradable plastics. She had built something truly remarkable, all while my father had been so consumed with Caldwell Enterprises that he never even noticed. But Olivia noticed now. That evening, as I sat on my back porch, sipping tea and letting the cool autumn air clear my mind, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Olivia. Board meeting tomorrow. Last chance to work together on this. She still didn't get it. She was clinging to the only world she had ever known. The empire our father had sculpted for her. But that empire was crumbling. And she refused to see it. The next morning, I woke up to unexpected news. Caldwell Enterprises stock had plummeted another 15% in pre-market trading. The headlines were brutal. Morgan Communications faces investor exodus amid sustainability crisis. Caldwell Enterprises struggles as outdated practices come to light. Shareholders demand answers. Is this the end of an era? I wasn't surprised. All I had done was shine a light on the truth. I had forwarded key environmental reports to the right people, the major investors who had been blindly trusting Caldwell Enterprises to adapt. But it hadn't. It was still operating under the same outdated, short-term profit-driven model that my father had insisted would last forever. Investors were pulling out. And Olivia was panicking. At exactly 9:30 a.m., she stormed into my home, her presence filling the room like a storm cloud. "What did you do?" she demanded, slamming a stack of papers onto my desk. Half our major investors were threatening to withdraw. I leaned back in my chair, feigning innocence. Funny how transparency works, isn't it? Olivia's voice sharpened. Transparency? You sent impact reports to our investors, reports that should have stayed internal. I shook my head. Those reports came from independent environmental agencies. I just made sure the right people saw them. She dropped into a chair, her carefully composed expression cracking. For the first time, I saw something other than anger in her eyes. Fear. The board is in panic mode, she admitted. They're talking about emergency measures, maybe even selling off divisions just to stay afloat. I nodded. They should be worried. Mom's companies are announcing major sustainability initiatives tomorrow, breakthrough tech that makes Caldwell Enterprises look like a fossil. Her hands balled into fists. You're destroying everything Dad built. I met her gaze. No. Olivia. Dad destroyed it himself by refusing to adapt. Mom warned him for years. He ignored her. He ignored me. And now, the world is moving forward without him. Olivia swallowed hard, looking down at the reports in front of her. She had spent her whole life believing that Caldwell Enterprises was untouchable. Now, she was watching it unravel in real time. After a long silence, she finally spoke. Her voice was quieter, almost vulnerable. I don't know how to do this without you, Lauren. I sighed, leaning forward. Dad always said we were stronger together. But he was wrong about most things. I expected her to argue. But instead, she just sat there, staring at the numbers that spelled out the inevitable. When she finally stood, she didn't storm out this time. She simply said, "I'll see you at the board meeting." But for the first time, I didn't think she was coming to fight. 1 year later, I stood at a podium overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the wind carrying the scent of salt and promise. Behind me, the first of our large-scale ocean cleanup systems was launching, a dream I had carried since graduate school, now made real through my mother's legacy. I took a steadying breath, scanning the crowd of reporters, scientists, and investors. Today is more than an environmental victory, I said. It's proof that success isn't just about quarterly profits or corporate dominance. It's about the impact we leave behind, the legacy we build for future generations. At the back of the crowd, I spotted Olivia. She wasn't the same woman who had sat across from me in that lawyer's office a year ago, smirking with certainty. She had changed. She had stepped away from Caldwell Enterprises after the board voted to dismantle it. Instead of fighting to preserve our father's outdated empire, she had chosen a different path. She now ran the Caldwell Foundation for Environmental Education, a project inspired by our mother's final wishes. Instead of leading board meetings, She spent her time teaching children about conservation, standing in tide pools with them, showing them the beauty of the ocean. After the event, she approached me with a quiet smile. Mom would have been proud, she said. I studied her carefully. There was no bitterness in her voice, just understanding. We both made our own choices, I replied. And I think, for once, we chose right. As the waves lapped against the shore, I realized this wasn't just my mother's legacy anymore. It was ours. Subscribe to Life Stories for more incredible real-life journeys.